Good morning and welcome to the porch. We're in here in the office right now and doing the video. We're getting ready to start back out on the porch, but I got some repair work I need to do out there and some cleaning. And more so than anything else, I got some wasp nest out there I've got to get out of the way. And then we're going to start doing these on the porch through the summer, at least when we can. But we're going to do this one today from in here in the office or slash studio. So let's get started. The subject matter is going to be about who are you? Now, let me kind of give you some framework as to why I'm touching on this subject matter today. I listened to a guy on YouTube the other day, and he interviewed at least three people that I watched. And at the end of the interview, he'd ask them, "Who are you?" And when they'd say, "Well, I'm such and such," they'd give their name. And he'd say, "No, no." He said, "That's not who you are. That's what your name is." He said, "Who are you?" Well, some of them would say, "I'm this," or "I do that." No, no, that's what you do. That's not who you are. And I kept waiting for him to explain what he was talking about, and he never did. Fact is, some of the people interviewed said, "Well, you're going to have to explain to me what you're asking because I don't understand." And the closest he came to giving an answer was this. He said, "You're not sad, you're not happy, and when you identify yourself not using these terms, then you'll be better off." I I don't know where he got that ideal at. I either misunderstood him or he never did explain himself very well. And I'm not saying this in criticism. What he did do is he provoked thought on my behalf, and maybe that's what he was trying to do. And I thought, well, that none of those folks could answer him as to who they were, or at least to his satisfaction. And he never did explain clearly enough for me to understand what the question really meant and what the answer should be. So I asked myself the question. I said, well, if he asked you, "Who are you?" what would you say? I would actually have an answer for that because I understand who I am. And here would be the direction I would go in that. Now, I'm going to reference to a biblical scripture, and I don't have the address of it or anything. Most of you read and studied your Bible will know that this scripture's in the Bible. I think it's in Psalms or Proverbs. But it says, "As a man thinketh, so is he." Now, that's King James version of it. If I put it in Arkansas language, I'd say something to the effect, "The way that you choose to think will determine who you are." And I believe that's true. I believe, as a matter of fact, I believe that's as true as it gets. Now let's go ahead and take a deeper dive into that thought process. And we're going to use a couple of extremes. We're going to swing the pendulum this way, and then we're going to swing the pendulum that way to an extreme on purpose, just for the sake of learning. So if the way you think determines who you are, let's study that. Now, this is a fairly deep subject if you get right down to it, but we're going to just kind of skim along the surface and at least leave ourselves with an understanding. So if a guy joins, say, a gang, we see a lot of gang stuff going on these days. It's always been around, but I think it's worse now than it's ever been. But he joins a gang, and it's my understanding that some of those gangs, you have to commit murderous crimes to be a part of that gang. And so if a person is hanging out in that environment and they're thinking that way, that's the thing that goes in their mind. The people they talk to, that's what they're talking about. And that's even a part of the initiation is murder. Okay. Sooner or later, they commit that after a time in that environment and in that way of thinking. So if somebody looked at that person or that guy, just for the sake of understanding, and they said, "Who is that guy?" You probably wouldn't say that's George or Bob or Bill or something like that, even though that might be the name. You'd say that's a murderer. Would you be right? Absolutely, you'd be right. That's how you would identify him because that seems to be the most prevalent thing in his life. Now, there'd be a lot of other things in a person's life too. That's another layer of understanding this, but let's just stay at the top surface today. So you'd say he's a murderer, okay? And you say, well, what's his name? Well, that's easy. It's whatever it is, Bill, Bob, George, whatever. But let's go ahead and swing this pendulum the other way. Let's think about old Mother Teresa, for instance. Her whole life, her thought process, I want to love and help people. I want to help the people that are poor and hurting and downtrodden. And if somebody says, well, who is Mother Teresa? Well, we know what her name is. That's good enough for the name part of it. But who is Mother Teresa? Well, most people would answer you and say she's a saint or was a saint. She's gone now, but she was a saint. Why? Because that was her actions. You got the guy over here that's a murderer. That's his actions. You got Mother Teresa over here that helps the poor and downtrodden and hurting people, and we call her a saint. That's how we identify them because that's what we see coming out of them. Now, here's where we want to get to on this, at least for today. So, we've identified who they are as a person, a murderer or a saint, by the actions that they take in their life. Now, you can tell people that you're this or that. As human beings, we have the capability of lying, but eventually, the way you act in life will determine what you really are and who you really are. Now, you are, let me say this as clearly as I can, you are a combination of the environment you're in, the way you think, the things you look at, and the materials you read, the studies you do. A doctor will be a doctor if he studies doctor and stuff and gets around doctors all the time. Who you are is determined by the lifestyle and the thinking that you choose to have, people you choose to be around. Now, I say all that to get to this right here because this is the important part. Not the question is who are you, but who do you want to be is the better question. Whoever you want to be, it's your choice. Whatever you choose to think about starts determining who you really are. People you choose to be around to influence your life, that's who you're going to be sooner or later. And you may say, no, I'm not going to be. Well, you'd be one of the rare few. And not that there isn't a rare few, but they are rare few. I wouldn't take that risk if it were me, be around the right people. What you choose to take in your life is important. Now, I'm going to get to something that I think is very important for people to hear in this day and time. We have such social media, Hollywood, newscast, and everything else that are trying to shape who you are, and it's working for them. Don't let that happen. The worst thing you can do is let somebody else determine who you are. You determine who you are. You determine what you're going to think about. You determine what you're going to watch on TV. You determine what you're going to watch on social media. You determine whether the news is telling you a lie or not, whether you should continue to watch that or find another source. Now, there's other sources for news coming up now that are more honest than they have been in a long time. Just something to consider. I'm not trying to lead you life myself, but just telling you need to consider some things because ultimately I'm not the guy that came up with how you think is who you are or what you're going to be. That's a biblical principle that I believe to be as true gets. But having said that, if you're not who you want to be, make some decisions about your life. Make decisions. Don't be around people that are negative and do things that you don't want to do or that you don't want to be. Get away from them. Don't watch newscasts that just spread one propaganda or the other propaganda. Try to find somewhere to get your information if you think you need that information through a source that's honest, or at least as honest as you can find. First and foremost, we're kind of going backwards here. Decide what you're going to think. Decide how you're going to allow your mind to develop who you are. I'm going to quickly say this because it's important. This kind of an eye opener for me after all these years of living. I've studied psychology and all this stuff, but I thought about it and I thought, well, it is really kind of simple to tell who people are. Just watch what they do. And you can say, well, is that a surefire way of doing it? Yeah, it really is. I was thinking of a person, okay, I'm going to say who, that is so selfish. It's unbelievable. And all their decisions are made in life on how they can get what they want out of life. That's a selfish person. Somebody said, who is that person? And I'd say that's a selfish person, and here's their name. You're not just your name, you're your actions more so than anything else. And I thought about this person. I thought about another person that I knew, and a very giving person, very kind person, generous person. And you'd say, well, who are they? Well, their name is this, and they're, I'd say, possibly a saint, or at least as close as you're going to get in this day and time. Okay, guys, it's kind of a fun deal, but it's really kind of important to watch people around you. Decide who they really are. Their actions will tell. They can lie to you, but their actions sooner or later will bear fruit and tell you who they really are. And then you decide what kind of relationship you want with these people. Okay, having said that, we here at the Porch love you. We want the best for you. May God bless and have a good day.